My heart ached once more when I heard the tragedy, the dreadful tragedy which most people avoid. South Carolina was the source of the story this time. A baby's skull was cracked and she had a brain hemorrhage. The infant was very emaciated and had shaken baby syndrome, receiving only enough calories to maintain her heart pumping. For today's video, we will be talking about the mother leaves baby with her father. An hour later, she was shocked to see her head. But before we dig down deep, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to get updated whenever a new video is published. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. It's a scenario you've probably never heard or read before. It's a subject that most people will ignore, in favour of reading about their latest Hollywood scandals, reading about the latest reality TV star, or worrying over their favourite football team. In reality, it was a far more horrific story which most people just simply failed to acknowledge because it was just that, horrific. Cheyenne Rae Owensby is nothing short of miraculous. She has been born strong and healthy, and that she is her mum's pride and joy. Because her parents were split up, she only sees her dad every 2 weekends. However, a misfortunate event dreadfully occurred one day when her mum left Cheyenne Rae with her daddy. She got a horrific word an hour or two after leaving the kid with James Davis Jr., one which would impact her entire existence. The tiny daughter was just 8 months old at the time. James Davis, her father, claimed he lost it, grabbed her by his hands and shook her since she wouldn't stop weeping all the time. The adult's power was apparently too much for her tiny body, and her father broke her skull and caused the brain to hemorrhage. Even so, no amount of punishment can help compensate what he caused Cheyenne. It's tough to comprehend that a parent could be so unconcerned about their child's welfare, yet it does happen. The baby was left in a heated car. Luckily, a passerby rushed to the child's rescue. The distraught mum received word that her baby had gotten to the county clinic and had stopped breathing. When her mum came to the hospital, she was informed that she might require lifelong specialised treatment even if the child did not stay in a vegetative condition. The mum started to plead to God to take her rather than the child after having heard this. The phone started ringing again, and she learned that her former husband had acknowledged shaking her and that he must have basically lost grip. Shaken baby syndrome, also known as severe head injuries, shaken affect disorder characterized, inflicting head injury, or whiplash shaking syndrome, is a significant brain injury or damage when a newborn or toddler is violently shaken. The brain cells are destroyed by shaken baby syndrome, which stops the brain from receiving sufficient oxygen. The shaken baby disorder is a form of maltreatment that can leave a child with lasting brain damage and even death. The shaken baby syndrome can be avoided. Parents who are in danger of injuring their child can get help. Other caregivers can be educated about just the risk of the shaken baby syndrome by family members. There may be no visible evidence of physical harm on the child's body. The face might be scarred at times. Bleeding in the eyes and brain, spinal trauma and injuries of the rib cage, skull, limbs and other bones are all traumas that may not be seen right away. The shaken baby syndrome affects numerous babies who display clinical manifestations of previous child abuse. The infant may seem okay after just being shaken in mild forms of the shaken baby disorder, but they could also acquire physical or behavioural difficulties over time. Please be aware that somehow a quick shaking of an infant's head might result in permanent brain damage. Shaken baby syndrome kills a lot of children. Shaken baby disorder survivors may need lifetime hospital attention for ailments like partial or complete blindness, development disorders, cognitive challenges, behavioural issues, intellectually disabled, neurological diseases and cerebral palsy. Specialists were battling for Cheyenne's survival somewhere at the institution where she was committed to spending the rest of her life in a coma. And then the miracle occurred. Even though half of her brain would have to be surgically removed, the tiny girl awakened with the ability to communicate and movement, although her right-hand side was paralysed. Cheyenne's wounds were so severe that her mum was forbidden from touching her just after the tragedy for fear of causing brain activity that might harm her. Despite the odds, Cheyenne was discharged from the hospital a couple of months later, a miracle for all who knew her. Cheyenne's mother is proud of her bravery and her will to live, determination, and just how far she's actually come. She constantly disproves doctors' theories. If specialists tell her she can't, She'll prove them wrong, her mother shared on Facebook, calling Cheyenne her miracle baby. Cheyenne nowadays can speak and run like some other kids her age, 3 years after it happened and after multiple surgeries, treatment programs and court appearances. Child abuse can have far-reaching effects. Clinicians have been studying the impact of child abuse and neglect on a child's physical, emotional, intellectual and interpersonal development for more than 30 years. Minor injuries to irreversible brain damage and possibly death are among the physical repercussions. The psychological consequences might vary from low self-esteem to extreme disassociation. Abuse may have cognitive implications, from attentional issues to learning disabilities to severe organic brain disease. Abuse has a broad spectrum of behavioural effects, from terrible peer interactions to incredibly violent conduct. As a result, the consequences of abuse or neglect impact both the victims and the society in which they live. Many complications make it difficult to grasp the circumstances and relationships that intensify or reduce the effects of violent events. The overwhelming majority of mistreated children do not exhibit indicators of significant distress. According to studies, there is a link between childhood abuse and a range of short and long-term consequences. The impact of child victimisation on children, teenagers and adults are still a source of much uncertainty and debate. The link between the origins and outcomes of childhood abuse is terribly complex because some elements, including the child's poor intellect, may encourage inappropriate behaviour by the parent or carer. Low IQ, on the other hand, can be the result of early childhood abuse. Going back to Amy Owensby, enthusiastically shared the news on the page on Facebook. The adorable images of her energetic 3-year-old kid with her over 200,000 social media followers. She expressed her appreciation to everyone to help them, prayed for them and greeted her daughter with a Happy Survivor Day. Cheyenne had been traumatised by her father for 3 years. It's been 3 years since Amy Owensby was informed Cheyenne wouldn't survive the night. It's been 3 years since her heart stopped beating. It's been 3 years since she's had half of her brain removed. It's been 3 years since their lives were forever transformed. Amy is so grateful Cheyenne is still here with her, showing that miracles happen and saying that Amy adores Cheyenne so much. Cheyenne's mother claimed that Cheyenne still suffers from the lingering effects of what happened to her when she was an infant daily. The absence of a brain, mainly on the left side of the 4-year-old, makes it difficult for her to move her right foot and hand. Amy Owensby shared an update on Facebook that Cheyenne is having a hard time holding a baby doll and her cup simultaneously. She will have to choose which she would prefer to keep at that time, since one of her hands isn't functioning. Amy Owensby explained that Cheyenne had to gaze at objects 2 inches away from her face because of the damage of the optic nerve induced by bleeding beneath her brain from being shaken. Observing her try so desperately to do just what other kids are doing, and my Amy's heart is hurting a bit further every time she can't. Davis, a truck driver, entered a guilty plea to misdemeanor child abuse, causing serious physical injury at the occurrence. At the same time, Circuit Judge Durham Cole issued a complete 20-year sentence, deferring after 10 years of service and 5 years under probation. As per the Spartanburg Herald-Journal, Davis feels guilty about thrashing his child when he snapped. Cheyenne Ray will require 2 additional surgeries as she grows and enjoys life, according to her mother. Amy Owensby seeks to spread awareness about the harm that may be inflicted to a newborn or small child by shaking them and creating irrevocable trauma in a moment of anger. It simply takes a couple of minutes to completely alter everything, according to Amy Owensby. A few moments of rage and fury might lead to an unimaginable. The shaken baby syndrome occurs far more frequently than we ever expected, and this must be acknowledged. Despite Cheyenne's disability, she had a tremendous passion for life. For the time being, she has blossomed into a cheerful young lady. Children in your own community are the victims of this horrible act even today as you're watching this. Furthermore, the predators and offenders could be your co-workers, members of the clergy, neighbours, or even individuals who attend your yearly family reunion. This is just one of the many stories of children who suffer from child abuse. Whether a child witnesses verbal or physical abuse, hears threats or hears noises of violence, or sees signs of such harassment in the form of bleeding, bruises, torn clothing or shattered objects on a victim, the repercussions are harmful in several ways. Children in our society are victims of a nationwide child abuse epidemic committed by people that claim to love them the most. For a child, simply seeing domestic abuse can be traumatising. And that is all for today's video. What can you say about this story? What is your takeaway from the story of Cheyenne? How can you help to stop child abuse in your own simple way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Before leaving, be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to get updated on our future content. With that being said, see you in the next one.